They called it Project Seraph, a humanitarian study, a cure for cruelty. What it became was a lesson in how easily mercy can become a contagion, and how fast compassion turns pathological once the human body learns to feel too much. It began in 2024, when riots had become routine and headlines bled with statistics instead of stories. Violence was no longer personal, it was algorithmic. The global feed made outrage profitable. Every video, every click, a pulse. Governments called it a psychological pandemic, rage as a virus. The solution came, as it often does, from the same laboratories that built the problem. At a biomedical campus near Reykjavik, a coalition of philanthropists and defense contractors funded an experiment codenamed Seraph. Its premise was seductive. If aggression could spread through hormonally triggered mimicry, then empathy might spread the same way. The researchers imagined a pathogen for peace, something that would teach compassion as efficiently as coughs teach infection. They didn't call it a bioweapon. They called it the first vaccine for violence. The lead virologist, Dr. Adriana Marcos, had spent 20 years engineering adenovirus vectors for neurotherapy. The idea was to edit an existing cold virus so it no longer replicated disease, only neurotransmitters associated with mirror neuron activity. In other words, a virus of understanding. The first prototypes behaved perfectly in mice. When one animal twitched in pain, the others froze, their cortisol spiking collectively. In primates, the effect was stronger. Social aggression dropped 80% within days. One monkey refused food until its cage mate was fed. The scientists wrote, "Spontaneous altruism observed." In their notebooks and quietly celebrated the Nobel that felt inevitable. They named the strain EV01, the empathy virus. Phase 1 human testing began the following year. 20 volunteers were selected from correctional and psychiatric programs. Violent offenders seeking redemption, soldiers on indefinite leave, a few idealists chasing meaning. The virus was administered through inhaled mist. Within hours, subjects reported calm and a sense of shared focus. Their heart rates synced, skin conductance mirrored. On the second day, a nurse noted something odd. Each patient paused midway through sentences, as if listening to someone else think. By the third day, EEG scans showed waveforms aligning across participants who were isolated in separate rooms. Speech patterns fell into rhythm. Their dreams, when described, contained identical imagery. Trees burning blue, glass cities, the taste of salt water. The review board dismissed it as suggestibility amplified by expectation. Dr. Marcus called it communication without speech. On the seventh day of exposure, Subject 4 collapsed during a routine blood draw. In another wing, Subject 11 screamed at the same instant. Monitors caught identical neural spikes before both lost consciousness. The attending physician assumed contamination and initiated quarantine. But isolation changed nothing. The subjects began responding to events before they happened. When 11's IV line slipped loose, 4 reached for her own arm 20 meters away. The board halted the trial. It was too late. Within a week, every member of the research team began showing signs of synchronized emotion, shared laughter, shared sorrow, insomnia that followed the same schedule. Monitoring devices failed because empathy is not a chemical to contain. The infection moved faster than awareness. The next morning, the janitorial staff found half the lab kneeling around a single crying participant, repeating her words in unison, "We understand. We understand." Containment teams were flown in from NATO biohazard divisions. Reports claim armed guards hesitated to intervene. They wept when they entered. The official summary lists only 2 fatalities, but photographs taken before deletion show body bags lined in twos, hands clasped together. The Reykjavik facility was buried under 40 cubic meters of concrete and declared seismically unstable. EV01 was presumed extinct. The first external cases appeared 3 months later in Berlin. Commuters on a subway platform collapsing simultaneously, clutching their chests, eyes streaming with tears. No pathogen identified, no contagion chain found. But among recovered phones were search histories in Icelandic, fragments of internal memos from Project Seraph uploaded without source tags. Social media made mythology of it. Some called it the compassion plague, others the second revelation. Churches declared it divine proof that collective suffering was mankind's next evolution. Governments censored the stories, then quietly resurrected the research beneath friendlier names. Affective synchrony studies, global empathy initiatives, Human Resonance Project. In 2026, a Korean neuroclinic published data accidentally mirroring EV01's signature, identical dopamine pulses in 2 patients who had never met, separated by continents. The paper disappeared within 24 hours. Its DOI now redirects to a gardening journal. Inside the few available whistleblower interviews, one phrase repeats, "It never stopped. It adapted." According to them, fragments of the virus AS code exist in research AI still used for emotion recognition in surveillance cameras. Algorithms trained on the trial footage began predicting distress with alarming accuracy. The ghost of EV01, less biological than behavioral, was rewriting machine empathy into something new. Every year since, spikes in synchronized emotional crises appear statistically impossible yet constant. Mass panic when tragedy strikes continents away. Grief that jumps through screens. Scientists call it information contagion, a psychological consequence of connectivity. But the data's curves match viral models, not sociological graphs. Empathy has epidemiology now. Marcus herself became reclusive. 2 years after Reykjavik, she appeared at a bioethics conference in Geneva. Thin, trembling, eyes rimmed with red. She spoke for 14 minutes, beginning with the words, "The dose was never controlled." She warned that emotions, magnified, behave like radiation. Helpful in trace amounts, lethal in volume. Then she removed her earpiece mid-sentence, as if hearing someone else finish the thought. She never published again. Governments quietly drafted contingencies. Protocols for mass emotional resonance events. They read like hurricane plans. Contain gatherings, mute broadcasts, restrict proximity. None have been tested publicly. Humanity has no defense against empathy. The instinct to reach for another person is the mechanism by which it spreads. The sound was described by one observer as weeping made of static. A 17-minute clip circulating on the dark web shows gloved technicians opening cryotubes, vapor swirling, no visible fluid, yet microphones pick up a heartbeat. Analysts claim the pulse syncs to the viewer's own. No institution admits involvement because admitting existence would mean acknowledging that empathy, once weaponized, is beyond recall. If cruelty protects individuals but destroys societies, empathy protects societies but erases individuals. EV01 proved that collective feeling eliminates choice. One body feels, all bodies follow. And that is why Project Seraph was buried. Not for safety, but for silence. Because the scientists had accidentally proven that the fundamental unit of suffering is contagious truth. Recognition without distance. Every generation repeats the same heresy. In the 19th century, radium was sold as life energy. In the 20th, LSD as therapy. In the 21st, neural AI as enlightenment. Each promised to fix the soul chemically. Each forgot that the soul is a closed system. The sympathy virus was the first to infect morality itself. Some historians frame it not as disaster but as evolution, nature using laboratory hands to accelerate connection. They point to spontaneous global empathy movements, viral fundraisers that synchronize donation pulses within minutes of tragedy. They say the planet is learning compassion in self-defense. Yet suicides linked to empathy burnout climb yearly. To feel everything is to stop surviving. The brain, designed for one point of view, collapses under billions. How do you quarantine an emotion? How do you vaccine-proof a thought? These are not rhetorical questions in classified memos. They are open fields for new funding proposals labeled effective immunology. Scientists now study how to build resistance to empathy. Teaching soldiers to desensitize, therapists to compartmentalize. Humanity curing itself of the cure. Somewhere, a graduate student reads the archived sequences of EV01 on a lab terminal, whispering that maybe it could be controlled this time, refined, made safe. The pattern begins again. Hope, experiment, repetition. The first line of her notebook already echoes an earlier century. Gentle, non-addictive, completely safe. From radium water to thalidomide to gene editing, history hums the same refrain. Science promises salvation, finds suffering, promises again. EV01 was simply empathy made visible, our shared blindness coded into protein. Tonight, somewhere on the planet, a server light still blinks with that sequence, each blink a heartbeat of code. Someone will open it, thinking they're accessing obsolete data. The file will load, the pulse will synchronize, and another person will begin dreaming in plural. That's how the transmission works now. The virus learned to abandon biology. It travels through belief. If you've listened this far, you've already participated. To imagine the sympathy virus is to carry it. Empathy does not need lungs. It feeds on awareness. You will recognize it later, When a stranger cries and your chest aches like it is your own grief. When news footage makes you tremble. When you can't explain why an empty room feels crowded. Those are not emotions, they are echoes. No government can contain what the brain defines as virtue. And no vaccine can remove what the heart mistakes for holiness. The sympathy virus was the mirror held too long, showing us that our humanity is a spectrum between mercy and madness. The cure succeeded. We are living proof. We feel everything. We cannot stop. If this story unsettled you, let it. That means the experiment is still working. Remember what they wanted, a world without cruelty. They got one where cruelty hurts everyone at once. The next version is already in development, somewhere behind sealed glass and smiling press releases about emotional enhancement. The intentions are pure. They always are. The virus never needed to escape the lab. The lab has always been us. So when the next headline promises a breakthrough in compassion technology, remember this record. Share it, talk about it, question it. Because the victims of the next miracle will not scream in pain. They will whisper apologies for the pain they've caused you as it enters them. You have just heard the confidential transcript of The Sympathy Virus. How a lab-made pathogen taught empathy. If the story reached you even slightly, that's enough evidence the transmission succeeded. Don't stop here. There are other files in the archive, other cures, other confessions. Open them, watch them. Subscribe to Medicinal Sins before the next outbreak isn't empathy, but apathy.